do finally, as with prior calls, we do ask that you remember that every day things change. This is a new dynamic for everyone. Still very much is unknown at this point. So we ask, of course, your patience and your graciousness as we try to sort of navigate our way through this, and do the same as well for David, Susie, and Yeli, who we know are working as hard as they can to get all the right answers as soon as possible. But please be patient with them as they work through this with all of us. Okay, so housekeeping out of the way, we're going to dive right in. David and Susie, we'd love to hear a brief update from each of you. So David, why don't you start, and we'll go from there.
Did we lose David?
Oh, David, can you hear us? All right, we're going to pivot to you, Susie, and we'll have David jump in when he's ready.
David sent a text that said he's muted. I'm happy to start. Hi. First of all, you guys are working such extraordinarily long days. I can't imagine it. And it is insanely nourishing, really, to log on to this and see everyone's faces here. I've been on statewide calls, national calls for authorizers, trying to figure out kind of how we can support our schools really effectively in this strange new world. And it's day, I don't know, 5 or 3 or 8 for some of the remote learnings, depending on when particular schools went out. And the anecdotes and reports back we're getting about the extraordinary success you are creating is amazing. So I first just want to start with that. And usually the people on this call are our leaders, and moment of privilege. We as leaders care an awful lot about our schools and our kiddos and the people that are trying to do all the right things and lift them up. And it's not the norm for all of you, I know, to get a round of applause. So I am applauding you and thanking you. And it is seriously nourishing just to see your faces, right? So I see Luann, and I saw Ira earlier, Karen. I know there's a bunch of you on here that are running SUNY authorized schools, but I mean this for all of the schools that are on the call that have never seen me before, and I don't matter a whit to them. Thank you for what you're doing for kids. We're last week to us, and a little bit of today seems like everyone's getting the process protocol, technology strategies to kind of even out and flow in a normal way. And the content, of the authorizing work has really, and should be, I think, currently a little subservient to you. We want to, I say this to our schools all the time, SUNY gave you a charter because we want you to be crazy and super successful. And so we're going to navigate how to do that together. I don't have a big specific announcement from SUNY one way or another. I will tell you that we're taking in lots of information about lottery dates, taking in lots of information about wins and challenges with serving the needs of special population students. And we're taking in lots of questions about what accountability is going to look like. Not just this year, but I think we've now had enough time to understand, depending on what happens for the remainder of this year, there will be an out-year ripple effect to how students are assessed, whether or not, no state assessment, so whether or not there are regents and other things. And we're trying to give you all a little space to make sure your kiddos are up and running before we convene you to make us smart about what the good decisions are. So I don't have a lot of, I don't have any edicts to report. So I hope that gets me a round of applause. There's no edicts from SUNY. We're really trying to give you a little breathing room so we can reach out and have some conversations about what the smart ways to gather information to give you credit for what you're doing now, and you will be doing in the future. That's our priority this week. And as Unika said, it will continue to evolve, and we look for all of you to help us understand the best way to evolve our work. That's all I got, Unika.
All right. Great. Thank you, Susie. David, I just want to make sure that you are unmuted and you can hear us and we can hear you right now.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Perfect. Thank you.
Great.
All right. If you can give a little update, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, so echoing what Susie said, we're so grateful for all of the work of our educators across the state, and we're working really hard to make sure that we're putting regulations and executive orders in place to ensure, to the best of our ability, that you're held harmless for doing this great work of supporting our students. And so there's a lot of work still to be done. There are a lot of questions that still don't have answers, and so I appreciate that disclaimer, Yamika, at the very beginning. But we're really glad to hear from charter school leaders from across the state to let us know about what their pain points are and how we can best support them. So to that end, we have been sending out information on a regular basis. We're actually having a call with our Board of Regents authorized charter schools tomorrow to talk a little bit about oversight and monitoring, two very exciting topics, I know, but how we are working to make sure that even though this school year looks very different from other school years, that we're still continuing to have conversations with you about how to grow and improve, and that we're still staying in touch. We'd also ask that Board of Regents authorized charter schools submit their education continuity plans to us. And I sent out an email on Friday with directions on how to do that. If you didn't get the email, then just reach out to your liaison. We are, I see a lot of questions coming up in the chat that we just can't answer right now because we don't have the answers, but it's good to get those questions because we pass it along to the legislature, the governor, and the regents. And so it's something that we'll continue to work on. But thanks for everything you do, and I look forward to answering some of these questions.
Great, thank you, David. So we will turn then, and on that note, directly to the questions. So the first question is, there's a lot of speculations about how long schools will be closed. Many are right now, they're closed, and the closure periods are different times across for different school districts across the state. If the closure extends beyond the current period, schools that the schools are expecting or planning, will there be new or different requirements for student learning materials as well as tracking? Can you answer any of that, David, please?
So right now, I think like many things, we just don't have the answer to that. We don't want to rush into things. Susie spoke a little bit about our calls with authorizers across the country, and I think the advice that we got, one of the pieces of it, don't rush into things. Have conversations with schools, see how schools are implementing their plans, but don't rush into new standards and new protocols for monitoring until we have a good handle of what's going on out in the field. And so we're going to be developing things like check-in protocols and ways that we can keep in touch with our schools. We just want to do that with our schools. And we want to do that with, as I said, not to schools. In terms of seat time requirements are still the same. There was an executive order early on, 202.4, that will hold schools harmless for being out of school for, I believe it was March 18th to the 31st. We'll see if the executive extends that. I think the situation changes every day. And until that time, your seat time requirements and being in session are basically waived, more or less. We're also working very closely with the regents to make sure that our regulations, and these are regulations that apply to all schools, not just Board of Regents authorized charter schools, but that the regulations mirror that executive order and ensure that we're specifically addressing charter schools in that messaging, so that you're included.
Okay, great. Susie, do you want to answer that question as well?
I think Susie is on mute.
Okay.
There you go. Thank you, host. I cannot unmute myself, but yeah, I will just echo. Here's what's going to be super helpful for us, which is what is the data. Both, I know, David, the state has particular sets of data and information that you will need to have collected from the schools. We want to understand what data you are collecting. I think those high touch, high touch attention is going to be paid for students with disabilities. Are there special provisions for ICT students, English language learners? And if you can keep what makes sense to you about the things you'd like to get credit for, right? So there's a frame that says we're going to require you to provide data about the following things in a regulatory manner. And then there's a frame that says, what are the things that we think are really super program delivery pieces that we want to get credit for, that I know, I've talked to a number of you, that I know your teachers are keeping, particularly for high needs special education students, in terms of contact with teachers, what's the frequency of that happening, what is the delivery of any special services. And for us, we're really interested in if you are kind of creating Zoom classrooms where an ICT or other support teacher is kind of creating a side room to provide differentiated services. That kind of data is going to be invaluable to us as a sector in terms of understanding the effectiveness of the work that we're doing now. So please be thinking about those pieces for us, not just your authorizer, but us together.
Okay. Thank you. We continue to get a lot of questions about lotteries, and I think there's some confusion between the deadline for families to submit applications, April 1st by law, and when schools hold their lotteries. Can you speak to those two issues? And do you have any guidance for schools who are concerned about the most appropriate timing for lotteries? And Susie, we'll stick with you.
Okay. So we've gotten a lot of feedback about this. I think the major message in the feedback to us has been having a common lottery date levels the playing field. And but we've gotten feedback that says April 1st is good, and we've gotten feedback that says we prefer May 1st. I am not a lawyer, but my legal team is given, I'm gonna add all sorts of disclaimers that this is not my legal team actually saying this, but you can elect to hold your lottery later, but of course you only have to hold a lottery if you're oversubscribed. So I think as a sector, we need to have a common voice about what our preferences are. And then the question is whether or not any advocacy around that, because it's a statutory issue. So any advocacy around that is likely to honestly get attention in the next few days, because there are a lot of other things going on. I don't know, David, what are you guys hearing in terms of feedback?
Yeah, I think similarly, we've been hearing that some schools might benefit from moving that lottery deadline to May 1st. Some schools have been very adamant that they want to leave it at April 1st. We were considering changing the date, but as of now, given that there isn't consensus in the field, we don't think that it makes sense, particularly because parents have come to expect that April 1st date. We'll continue to work with Susie and SUNY and our fellow authorizers, as well as the field, to talk further about that April 1st date, particularly as it gets closer. But the flexibilities that you do have, are that you don't need to hold your lottery on April 1st. The law only says that you need to hold a lottery if you receive more applications than seats by April 1st. So most of our schools don't hold their lottery that day. Most schools will wait a week or two, some schools even a month or two. And so you still have that flexibility. In addition, and I know actually Susie's legal team put out some good guidance on this. We sent some emails out about it, but you do have considerable flexibility under Executive Order 202.1 to not hold that lottery in person. In fact, I would not hold that lottery in person, given the health and safety of our communities. And so we would encourage you to use the flexibilities that are afforded to you to have those lotteries remotely. If you have an auditor that helps facilitate that lottery, they can hold it remotely. We would just ask that you record the lottery, that you transcribe it later on, and that's just, and you also post, you live stream it rather, and that you post notice of that on your website. And again, we sent an email about it. Susie's legal team has some great guidance on it. And if you're not sure, we would recommend that you either talk to your legal counsel or you reach out to your authorizer.
David, Yumika, sorry, I'm going to jump in. Can I ask a question about what we should do? I don't have an answer. So, and I just want everyone to know I'm not expecting David to have an answer. So I'm going to raise this issue. A number of the upstate schools also have to provide transportation guidelines or requests to their local districts in a time frame that may not embrace May 1st. Is that a gentle way of saying it? And so is there an opportunity to think together about how to address that with you?
Yeah, so we know that the April 1st transportation deadline is very important to our schools. And for New York City people, this is something that really is a very big issue outside of the city. So this might not be pertinent to you, but in places like Utica and Syracuse and Buffalo and Rochester and Truxton, New York, it's very important. And so we're actually, we let the executive know that this is an issue. It's also an issue for non-public schools, and we asked for an executive order that will provide some flexibility in this, as well as releasing guidance from state ed saying that schools should be granted flexibility in pushing past that April 1st deadline. If schools have individual problems with their districts, then they can reach out to myself, or they can reach out to Susie or the appropriate contacts in those offices. And we'd be happy, I'm sure, sorry to volunteer you, but knowing Susie, she'd be happy to raise this with the districts, and we would be as well. Further guidance and further support forthcoming, but it's definitely an issue that both SUNY as well as the New York State Charter School Association helped identify very early for us.
Thanks, David.
No problem.
All right, thanks both of you. That was great. So one of the last questions we have here is going to be about programming into the summer. Can you speak to what flexibility schools would have on their own to decide to have school during what would normally be the summer break? And what date and timing might they need to factor in? For example, July 1st is the new fiscal year, so how would that affect any thoughts on extending into summer? And then finally, if schools want to contemplate a change to their calendar for the summer, what would they do? And David, we'll start with you.
Yeah. So we always encourage meaningful extended learning time for our students, whether there's a COVID-19 crisis or not.
That was really smooth, can I just say?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Very well said.
Thank you, Susie. And actually, there's a lot of research to show the efficacy. Our mutual friend, Mackie Raymond at Credo, has showed that one of the reasons why we have such strong results in the charter sector is because of the increased math and ELA instruction that we give. I think I would underline and emphasize the meaningful extended learning time. So schools any charter school at any time, and I'll speak for Board of Regents authorized charter schools, have the flexibility to request a change of their calendar. And I would, if the school is interested in doing that, at any time they can reach out to their liaison and work through them to change that within their charter. And it would be a non-material revision, relatively easy. There might be some caveats to that, so just contact your liaison. In addition, one of our requirements is ensuring that parents have ample notice about the calendar. So if you're contemplating changing your calendar, the problem is not with me, the problem is with your parents and families. And so make sure that you're communicating that with them. Right now, unfortunately, the bad news is we don't have any extra money for schools that are going to school in the summer. And so this would be something that you would need to do out of your per pupil. Lots of schools do it. So I don't know the exact number, but we have a lot of schools that start school pretty early in August. Some of them start school, at least for staff, on August 1st. These are unprecedented times, and so we would ask that you think outside the box as to how you hit the ground running when you're back. We want schools not only to think about their education continuity plans, but also the plans for reintroducing students into the milieu of schooling once they're back. And how do you make up for that lost time? What academic interventions do you put into place so that students are continue to be college and career ready, and that you're closing the achievement gap? The last thing I would say is although we don't have any money, there are some funds out there. I know that the New York City Charter School Center has a grant for COVID-19 related issues that have come up, or schools that want to increase their capacity. So if you're a school in New York City, you can reach out to the New York City Charter School Center, and I'm sure there's information on their website. And I think SUNY might have blasted something out as well, and I can add something to the fields in general.
Thank you, David. Susie, you want to follow up?
No, I think I'm good. I mean, I think David covered it. And if there are unique circumstances, call us, call our legal counsel, because we want to help you navigate this.
Okay. Before I turn it over to the chat to Anna, I just want to give Susie, give you a response, or you or David an opportunity to say anything else. If you want to add another comment before we switch to the text about anything that we've discussed so far.
Can I just, let me reiterate what I said at the beginning. Many of us are upstate. There's, I don't know, there's like really sticky snow outside of my office window. Given everything else that's going on, there's a little bit of oh, right, it's March. And so in upstate, it's 50 degrees one day and there's snow the next day, which is where we are. In the midst of all of that normalcy, you all are creating for hundreds of thousands of kids the normalcy of having a place to go every day, where I know, because I've seen this from our schools, the teachers are interacting with kids every day, even if it's just for a 4 or 5 minute phone call. These are extraordinary times. You are extraordinary leaders. I wish we had every answer for you right now. Please email me, call me, keep attending these online chats, because we're trying our best to respond to the ways that you need big government to support you. So keep us informed, keep us, in line, wag your finger at us if we're not answering you quickly enough. And at the same time, we may tell you we don't have an answer now, but we're advocating for the best choices for your kids, because you guys are making those every day. So that's my closing.
Well put. I don't know how I can beat that, but what I would say is what Susie said, ditto. Stay in touch with us, stay in touch with your liaison, and let us know where the pain points are. But the best thing you can do is continue to provide as best of an education as you can to our students, and share those effective practices. I was Really glad to see a lot of, in the news media, they're picking up a lot of the work happening with our schools. Read them. I read all those articles, and I find that they're really informative, and a lot of it is just good instructional practices. Also, be part of the conversation with us about how we can best support you, as Susie said, and don't be shy about reaching out. You know, I know we're all very busy. We're all adjusting to this new reality, but we do this for your schools, we do this for the kids, and we look forward to continuing to support you the best that we can.
Well, thank you both.
All right.
So we'll take a couple of questions from the chat before I turn it over to Corey and Randall at the New York City Charter Center to field some questions that are specific to New York City schools. So Susie, you said it, you said big government, so I've got to dive in. When I think big government, and I know I've seen this on lots of people's minds, the next thing that I think of is funding. So folks are continuing to ask the question, what is the status of funding for the remainder of this academic year? So schools are preparing invoices to go out next week. Should they expect payment on May 1st? And then if you are looking in your crystal ball, what would be your crystal ball for beyond the 1920 school year?
You know, Drat, I have a real crystal ball in my regular office, but not at my home office.
The magic 8 ball will suffice in this moment.
But anyway, I was going to say I was old enough to be around when it was invented. Listen, it is in the interest of the State University of New York to Charter Schools Institute to advocate for schools who are delivering services for kids. And so I would be really surprised, given everything I've seen since Thursday, and all of the school plans that we've received, and I'm sure David's gonna say the same thing about his school plans, the state ed school plans, and New York City DOE for their school plans. People, educators who are concerned and care, this is like such a moment for our teachers, I just have to say, who are concerned and care so deeply about the children that they are, you know, kind of grabbed by the belly and getting out of bed for every day, that this is not a place where SUNY is going to not advocate for all of the funding. I don't have that crystal ball or 8-ball. And I think we all know that, you know, that's why the question is being raised, right? There's a feeling of uncertainty. I think everyone at the State University, and I would say at the State Ed Department and at DOE, because we have frequent phone calls, are concerned about supporting kids and families and your teachers. That really, I've said this for a long time, it's the teachers that lift up the kids. We try to create an environment where they're successful at doing that. But at the end of the day, it's the teachers that lift up the kids. And so I certainly will continue to advocate that it is the teacher that lifts up the kids. What happens for the rest of the state budget, I don't control. But when I understand things that may be happening, and right now, by the way, I'm not hearing about any changes. I should have started with that. Right now, I'm not hearing about any changes. But if I do, I certainly am going to advocate for you all, and I'm going to talk to everybody about advocating for the schools. But right now, I'm not hearing about any changes. Pretty much everyone is very thankful for all of the school teachers and their leaders that are working so hard for kids every day. I don't know, David, what do you know?
Well, I do know that it really has been, usually it's a struggle to get charter schools included in many of the provisions that are being put forth at the state level, but it's been very easy in this crisis, and people have been much more inclusive than they normally are. I know that there's a lot of uncertainty out there, but it's because people are not that funding isn't important, but people are really thinking about how we feed the homeless and how we triage medical care for people. And things are moving even more slowly than normal, and it's hard to get people's attention. I do know that we're doing everything with, in conjunction with SUNY and the DOE and our advocacy organizations to ensure that there's as much certainty around funding as possible. We're very confident that that the funding for the period enumerated in the governor's executive order, that March 18th to March 31st, you will be held harmless. I know that a lot of people in the chat have said, well, the school year we might be closed the whole school year. People are very aware of that. It's not lost on our legislators or the executive, and they'll work through it. I think like many things, they're triaging, and there's a fix for now, and they'll get to it. So I would just keep in contact with us. And I see some people have said how valuable these little fireside chats are. And so we should just continue to have them. We should continue to talk. And as soon as we get information, actually, I apologized in an email the other day because I sent 2 emails back to back because we got some more information. But as soon as we get information, we're sending it out. We're trying to be as transparent as possible. And just keep holding our feet to the fire. Keep asking the questions. No silly question, whether it's big or small. Reach out to us and stay in touch. That's what we're here for. So thank you, Mika.
Thank you both so much. So last question that we're going to pull from the chat that is of statewide, I think, interest and importance, and then we'll turn it over to New York City. And so David, I think some of the specificity of this question is for you, but then for both of you, the sort of your global perspective and guidance around Regents exams. So David, what are you hearing? What are you thinking? Look in your magic 8 ball, give it a shake. And then and then for both of you. No, I
would order one if my Amazon deliveries weren't so delayed.
Well, my 9-year-old just got one for her birthday, and it is yes, you are not dating yourself. So trip down memory lane for that. So what do you think they will happen? And then sort of the more, the less technical question, the more interpretive question for both of you is, what guidance would you give schools right now who have seniors for whom those sorts of tests are of particular importance, or seniors in general and their status, especially if there's any uncertainty about how the school year will end, Regents or no Regents?
Yeah, very good question. Not a question that I have an answer to. I don't have a crystal ball. And these decisions are made in the consultation of many, many stakeholders, including charter schools. So we do want to hear what you think and how you feel about this. A lot of people say it's too early to tell. It's the 23rd of March, and June is still a long way away. But the decision makers, and unfortunately, as powerful as I like to pretend I am not one of them, are thinking very hard about this. They know the issues. It's something that we had conversations about a week and a half ago, and they know how high stakes this is. There's a lot of precedents, again, not knowing how this will turn out, but there is a lot of precedents in the past for allowing students to giving them a pass, a blanket pass. It happened in the 60s and 70s. Around the Regents exams, in case something happens. In the past, it's been an exam was leaked and the children had the answers. But unfortunately, this is one of those topics that we just will have a little uncertainty for in the short term. Regarding graduating seniors, I would, just like we're telling you, I would be in communication with them to let them know that you're in constant contact with the state and your authorizer, and that regardless of what happens, you're making plans for them to successfully graduate this academic year. Again, barring some national proclamation or directive from the US Department of Education, I can't imagine that students won't graduate. However, it's early in the semester. We don't know. So how are you supporting your students with their anxieties, especially your seniors, and how are you supporting them in transition from high school into college? How are you ensuring that their senior year is as positive and memorable as possible? How do you make up for things like missed senior days or missed prom or things of that nature? But also, how do you ensure that your students have the critical thinking skills and fortitude to transition into a much more relaxed environment of college, where you're not there to support them in those ways? And again, I would look to some exemplars like KIPP. KIPP has a great program called KIPP Through College. Harlem Children's Zone has a great high school to college transition plan. And sorry if I'm missing anyone. In addition, I see some people in the chat talking, John Rosenberg from Hebrew Public, talking a little bit about some of the alternatives that the College Board has around APs. We don't know, I had a question earlier today from Harlem Children's Zone about the June administration of the SATs. And I know that our colleagues at the New York City DOE, particularly Angeli Matos, are staying in close touch with decision makers around that and what's going to happen in New York City. So unfortunately, still a little uncertainty, but we're working very hard to work through these policy issues.
Can I chime in real quick? Thanks.
Absolutely, of course.
Go ahead.
Not hearing the wah, wah, wah. I'm going to respond a little. I'm not respond, but just chime in. So, all of the things David said about graduation this year are certainly considerations, and I think that it will be fluid, and we can have, if kids don't have a in-person graduation from high school this year, then we, as the adults who care for them and get out of bed every day to serve them, should have a conversation further on about the kinds of things we want to support, the kinds of rituals and routines we want to support them with farther out. The other issue at play for our schools that some really smart people, thank you, you're on this video call, have made me aware of is the out year considerations. And so, if in fact the school determines it's going to substitute a particular AP exam or a practice Regents exam for the 9th graders in algebra this year, will SUNY honor that? And that is a 3 to 4 year kind of change in your charter accountability plan. So first is, I will just say, when things are proposed that kind of make sense for a majority of the schools, I'm really interested. And so if you have solutions about graduation and promotion standards that really seem to make sense logically to you, that will have more than the next year accountability determination. So right now we're thinking about what's going to happen the rest of this year and in the summer. And then I know this, the schools are up for renewal next year, thinking, what about us? That's very important. I want to understand about the schools that are up for renewal next year, but I actually want to understand about the schools who are up for renewal 2 years or 3 years from now, because there are some decisions or policy guidance that we're going to be asked to make that will affect those students and schools that are serving those students. So I don't have an answer today, but I am imploring you to reach out to me, because we want to be well informed and thoughtful, not just for I don't have the answers for the next 3 months, so I'm not diminishing the challenge of that. But in addition to the next 3 months, 6 months, I want your brilliance in making us smarter about really good policies and protocols to put in place for the next year, 2 years, and 3 years, because this will have a cascading effect. Thanks.
Thanks, Susie. I think you're totally right about that. And I think that's one of the things that we're already starting to think about how charter schools can be at the forefront of what it looks like for us as a state and as a country and as an education sector, to know that this was unexpected, but it will never be unexpected again. So I'm going to hand it over now to Corey and Randall from the New York City Charter Center, with my big thanks. David and Susie, just so you know, I'm going to leave you unmuted, so that if any questions or things head your way, I'm just giving you fair warning, in case you're shaking 8 balls over there. I mean, magic 8 balls. And also thanks to Angeli Matos and Aaron Cochran from the New York City DOE, who are also on right now. And so I will hand it over to Corey and Randall.
Thanks, Anna. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Corey from the Charter Center. We just want to start before we get into questions for DOE. David mentioned that there has been some COVID-19 crisis funding opportunity. And I wanted to give Randall Iserman, the Director of School Supports at the Charter Center, just a moment to speak about it if you haven't already gotten the emails from the Charter Center that we sent out last night. Randall, are you on? Randall? Are you able to unmute him?
There I go.
Oh.
I was muted there for a moment. I'm sorry, Corey, you were talking about once again, the funding for some specific grants.
Yes, if you could just tell everyone what that's about if they weren't aware.
All right, for anyone in New York City for the time being, there is a large anonymous donor group that is contributing to schools who need specific help to get their entire populations up and running in online or remote platforms. The idea is that, of course, that kind of access isn't equal across any given school population or even among schools. And so they want to make grants of up to $30,000 per school to support the schools with whatever kinds of technology or online services or other kinds of services that we need to help schools provide so that all kids in that school population can get equal access to the curriculum online. If you have questions or if you have concerns, if you haven't heard about it before and you're in New York City, by all means email me. It's going through me, and that's Iserman, RISERMAN, at nyccharterschools.org.
Great, thanks, Randall. And just because the center hosts the Common Online application for New York City charter schools and lottery has come up a bunch, can you say what, if anything, you're doing with the Common Online app?
Sure. First of all, let me reiterate David's strong mention of the fact that the April 1st date is the earliest that one can hold a lottery and close one's enrollment application period. And there are a number of schools here in the city that had already, even before this problem struck, planned not to close their enrollment period until a little bit later in April, and then to run their lotteries on the 7th or the 9th or even the 15th of April. Those plans can continue to go forward just as they are. And as I believe David mentioned, if you want to extend your date because you want to do some more online recruiting, you can do that as long as you've consulted your authorizer and gotten that enrollment change approved. We are going to keep the Common Online app open an additional 3 weeks. We normally close down right around the 1st just because it feels cleaner and simpler, but right now schools may want some extra time. So we will keep the Common app open until around the 24th of April. That does not change an individual school's access. If your school is still accepting applications only until April 5th, for example, that's when your ability to accept those applications through the Common app will also close. It will simply mean that on the Common app, there will be a note next to your school stating that you have stopped accepting applications at that time.
Great, thank you. All right, turning now to NYC DOE, we have Anjali and Erin on the phone. And I'm just gonna ask you guys a couple questions that we've seen come in. We've also seen some, you guys been sending out a lot of updates, but just to make sure everyone on the call understands, you wanna give a quick update on the status of students picking up school food in New York City?
Erin, are you unmuted? Sorry. All right, friends, so I'm gonna jump in. This is Anjali. So we have currently 439 sites in New York City that are offering grab and go breakfast and lunch. Starting today, parents can pick up for students as well. So I know that's something folks were asking about. Currently, one person can pick up 3 meals. So 1 breakfast and 2 lunches. And it's limited to only 1 day's worth, right? So those 3 meals are the maximum the parents can pick up now, or students. And the sites are open from 7:30 to 1 p.m. And we sent out the 439 locations. It's in our emails, it's in our SharePoint, but reach out to us if you need access to that list.
Great. Can you talk a little bit about the rec centers that have opened in New York City?
Yeah, for sure. So starting this week, we have about 100 regional enrichment centers, or RECs. These centers are for first responders, so parents that are healthcare workers, transit workers, etc., that need a place to send their kiddos while they go to work, since they are considered essential staff. The centers offer 3 meals a day, and they're open from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Parents, first responders should have received a survey from their union directly. But now we also have the parent survey online, and anyone can access it. We also had that link to that survey in our last memo. So please reach out if you have any further questions about that.
Great. Moving
Quick
on.
question, Corey.
Yep.
Should we be, this is actually for Anjali, should we be asking schools to message their families if they have family members who are healthcare workers or other critical personnel?
That's a good one, Randall. Thank you. So in our last memo, we also attached a family-facing letter for schools to send out to their families. So that's an option for sure. I know that some schools have done robocalls with this information, which is a little bit easier. And of course, if you have parents identified already as first responders, you can also do direct outreach to them.
Another question that we've been getting a bunch has been about the per pupil payment cycle 6, which we know has opened for you guys. Do you have any updates about the timing and deadlines on that, and what schools should be looking for when they fill that out?
Yeah, for sure. So our deadlines have not changed. So it remains the same. Right now, the portal opened on the 18th, on March 18th, and the deadline is on March 27th. As of now, again, we're not extending the deadline. If you are having trouble, and we completely understand at this point, if you're having trouble and need a day or two, please reach out directly so that we can coordinate with you. And I'll just reiterate what David and Susie said earlier. At the moment, we do not have further information about how funding or if funding will be impacted at all for this year, but we are ready to issue, the full payment 6 payment, the full payment for the cycle, and any adjustments that are, if any adjustments are needed, schools will have to do that during the reconciliation cycle in July.
Another question that we've seen is about devices. I know Randall has mentioned that we recently had a grant come in that we can now offer to charter schools in New York City, but are there devices available through DOE for charter school students?
So at the moment, charter school students are not eligible for the iPads that the district is distributing. We are looking into this a bit further for students with disabilities, and we'll share more when we have more details.
Another area where I've seen even questions this afternoon again, but I know you held a session on Friday with respect to special education and services for students in charter schools. Do you have any updates since Friday or any pertinent information that you could share with this group about when they could see information about educating students with disabilities and what DOE's position is?
Yeah, so right now we are in the process of doing a few things. So, well, actually, let me back up and start in case we have new people here online. So we started providing, or we're in the process of providing teletherapy for students that have speech, counseling, OT, and PT mandates as where appropriate. Right now, providers and therapists are in the process of working with schools and working with families to get consent forms filled out. I know consent forms have been, it's been a frequent question, and we're working through the process right now of getting that confirmation email that is needed. So more to come on that. In the meantime, we are working to issue a frequently asked questions document, and we're also working to schedule office hours to give schools an opportunity to ask questions, etc. Yeah, so that's what we have planned right now.
One question I'll ask, because I've seen it came up a lot on Friday and I'm seeing it in the chat too. Do you guys have the consent forms that you're having the DOE providers use available for charters, or will that be made available soon?
Yep, we do. We do, and we'll share that in our next memo. And to clarify, Corey, the therapists or providers are filling out these consent forms that are online on behalf of the parents.
Happy Monday morning.
Great. And then I think the last topic that we've seen come up has been about the school survey. As most of you know, DOE the school survey every year that most, if not all, the charters in New York City take advantage of at some level. That survey is usually going on right now. Are there any updates on what schools can be doing if they had maybe gotten the copies of the survey at their school, but obviously no one's in school anymore? What can they do if they still want to be, facilitating the survey right now or during the incoming weeks and months?
I can take on this one. Thanks, Corey. So just so that folks know, the deadline for the survey has been extended to April 8th. So you have a little bit more time to get these missing materials and reach out to folks. If you are missing your codes or you left papers in your school building, please definitely reach out to schools.nyc.gov, your normal operations inbox, and we can help you get access to those codes and materials. And we just want to share that we know that there are a lot of schools that really value this survey, and it does appear quality reports and families value that information. So we just want to, with folks, to be a sort of and just really kind of evaluate all of your different priorities that you're encountering now. Getting words that I'm breaking up. But yeah, so folks just reach out to charter schools. It's NYC, and we can facilitate getting you those materials.
Erin, if you could maybe put just a note in the comment box, just so everyone can see the email address, because I think you were breaking up while you were talking.
No problem.
Thank you. A couple questions that have come in through the chat are about ATS and how to access ATS if people are not in their school buildings. whether that's because you use ATS for your daily attendance, which you don't have to do, but some charters do, and or you need to enroll students or make changes to that. Anything from that, Anjali or Erin?
Yeah, so so charter schools can access ATS through Web Connect to, to do the same functions they would do through the DOE network computer. We'll send that link and that information to everyone so that you can have that. You'll need a DOE email as well. So we'll follow up in our email, Corey, with all those details.
And then Anjali, could you just clarify again who the families are that are able to take advantage of the rec centers? I saw some questions asking if teachers were allowed to send students there. Can you just give a quick overview of who is allowed to utilize these rec centers?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the priority for the recs are first responders, so healthcare workers, transit workers, etc. I'm not sure if teachers are considered in the prioritization for the recs, but I can come back with that, Corey.
The other question I saw was, are you going to be opening up more food distribution sites for families and students to access beyond I think over 400 you mentioned?
Yeah, so that's not the plan at the moment, but our understanding is that we are assessing the needs right now and sort of monitoring how many meals we're distributing daily, and as of right now, the distribution rates have been really low. So I'm not sure that if the rates continue to be low, that we're going to be opening more locations. But again, this is changing by the minute sometimes. So we'll keep this group posted if there are changes to those sites.
Great. Okay, and I'll turn it back over to you as we are just about at 6 p.m.
Awesome. So thank you again, everyone for listening, for dialing in, for David and Susie and Jelly and Erin, Corey, Randall. I just echo everything that folks have said before about linking arms in this unprecedented moment and carving a path forward. As Yomika said when we opened, we will continue to hold these calls on a weekly basis. We might shift the time in order, as we all learn the new realities of juggling multiple priorities from the same four walls. So be on the lookout for future communications. Absolutely keep the questions coming. Any feedback on the forum and facilitation, we are happy to hear it. And we will look forward to convening again. If for any reason, as we move to a weekly iteration, if for any reason major updates happen between 1 week and the next, we absolutely will all work in collaboration to get out either updates or to facilitate an interim call so that we don't let major updates go uncommented on. Corey, would you add anything else before we wrap?
Nope, I would just say, we appreciate all the work that everyone has been doing. We know this is a stressful time. We know there are not always answers. I've seen a lot of comments on the funding, and I think, we'll just echo kind of what James, I know, has said to schools when he's spoken to you all. This is, our number one priority is making sure that schools are held harmless during this time. And so that is what the center is doing. That's what the New York Charter School Association, your authorizers are there. So please, we know you have a lot of other stuff to worry about, and you are working very hard on that. And so please continue to do that, and let us do this piece. And we will do everything we can to make sure that the right resolution is reached for everyone, which I think we all know what that is. So thank you again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night. Be well.